Twisted Metal has been around for almost 30 years, spanning 8 released games and introducing vehicular combat to the world of gaming. It was a flagship franchise for Sony back in the day and beloved by many, but has petered out in recent years. The Twisted Metal show on Peacock has revived some interest in the property, and now the question becomes, will the next Twisted Metal game ever occur, and what could it look like? Well, I've got an idea to shake things up. Did you ever play Batman Arkham Knight, drive around in the Batmobile, blowing up tanks with rockets, and have it remind you just a little of Twisted Metal? Now forget the tank mode, obviously, and imagine those rockets being fired while you're driving around full speed in the Batmobile, doing hairpin turns to dodge enemy fire, and unleashing a barrage of destruction on iconic DC characters driving unique enemy cars equally as souped up as yours. If you're struggling to bridge the gap between these two properties, you know what Twisted Metal and DC have in common? Crazy weaponry, recognizable vehicles, and iconic homicidal clowns. They're more alike than you might initially think, and I feel like it could mesh perfectly. Here's my proposed setup. DC's Lex Luthor, who is the head of a multinational corporation with seemingly infinite power and reach, just like Calypso from Twisted Metal, ends up partnered with some kind of villainous wish-granting entity so that the Twisted Metal tournament can still operate in the familiar territory of, if you win, you can have any one wish granted. I don't know who that could be off the top of my head, but I'm sure they could at least cover the general basis of wish granting in regard to the usual suspects of power, money, fame, babes, etc., and basically pull whatever strings necessary to make good on their end, or at least pretend to, because if you're a fan of Twisted Metal, you know Calypso, the organizer of the tournament, has a bad habit of sometimes using people's words against them and turning their wishes into some distorted interpretation that ends badly. So obviously you'll have an assortment of villains joining to achieve their greatest desires, but also heroes joining in the hopes of putting an end to the tournament, like the different drivers of the Outlaw police car do in Twisted Metal. You could even impugn the heroes' motives by having Lex Luthor kidnap someone close to them, or threaten them in some other way to where they have no choice but to take part for specific reasons. It doesn't have to be ironclad, as long as it at least mildly explains why this type of situation could feasibly be occurring. In fact, since Calypso is arguably a multi-dimensional being that can exist in different realities, it would totally work for him to just cross over into the DC universe, and if not partner with Lex Luthor, then just do the whole thing himself. The Twisted Metal series is wacky and nonsensical, which is an understatement, so suspension of disbelief is usually required, but you can spin as much narrative as you want in regard to each contestant's personal story and motivations according to which character the player picks, and how things progress as they win their way through the rounds. The lore is the most interesting part of Twisted Metal if you really sink your teeth into it, so I would expect these stories to be satisfying even if they're relatively brief for each character. Now, it wouldn't be Twisted Metal if there weren't some souped-up cars ready for action, and since not every prominent DC character is known for having an iconic ride, you might think that would exclude some of them from being considered, but I think it could be fun for the devs to design special cars for anyone they might want to be in there. Obviously, Batman gets the Batmobile, but what could the Joker drive? Honestly, it's so easy for me to imagine him in Sweet Tooth's ice cream truck with just a different paint job and theme to it, but it could be anything that feels like it fits. Put the Flash in a speedy sports car painted like his suit. Hell, put DC's Darkseid in a semi-truck as a neat little nod to Twisted Metal's Darkseid. If you think it's unrealistic for a being like Darkseid to enter a car combat competition, just remember that in the first Twisted Metal, one of the participants was Satan. You have to embrace the nonsense and the chaos. Another important thing to make the cars people drive feel unique and personal is by giving them a super. In Twisted Metal, in addition to the standard missiles, bombs, etc. that everyone gets, each character's car has a unique special attack, whether it's Axel's Shockwave or Flower Power's Flower Power. Which, by the way, Poison Ivy would make a great replacement for that lady. Her super could be giant vines that hold an enemy in place for a few seconds and do a little crushing damage over time while you pelt them with your other weapons. Deathstroke's super could just be a hyper barrage of different bullets ending with a slightly delayed laser-pointed sniper shot that's tough to hit but does massive damage. Superman's super could just be him sticking his head out the window and using his eye beams with a little tracking. I know, hard to imagine Superman in a deadly contest like this, but we've seen his morality turn sour before in the Injustice fighting games. Give someone a strong enough reason to come, and they will come. You could also make the tournament non-lethal somehow, with drivers getting ejected from their seats when their cars blow up to pander to any hero's refusal to kill, but that's kinda lame, so I'd rather they not have to. The point is that supers actually provide an opportunity to go above and beyond the wacky yet mildly traditional weaponry of Twisted Metal, because we're dealing with people who in some cases have straight up superpowers, so those powers should manifest in the tournament in the form of special weapons. Of course, there's plenty of important characters who don't have powers, but they'll still be able to hold their own, like the aforementioned Deathstroke with his arsenal, or Batman with his batarangs and other technology. As I said, there's no reason for any DC character not to potentially be in this tournament that we can't narratively circumnavigate around, unless they wouldn't fit in a car, like Doomsday. My personal favorite picks for Twisted Metal at DC, as I'm calling it, would include Batman, the Joker, Harley Quinn, the Flash, Catwoman, Cyborg, Raven, Deathstroke, Poison Ivy, and Harm. I'm just a big fan of Harm. Twisted Metal has bosses too, ranging from other relatively normal cars to large tanker trucks and attack helicopters to giant flying mechs, and so with more room for variety and expanding the parameters of what could be allowed in the arena, I think for bosses you could have people like Reverse Flash, Solomon Grundy, Darkseid, Brainiac, even Trigon. Be as ridiculous as you want to make it, as long as it's fun. At this point, it's impossible for me not to see the potential overlap between Twisted Metal and DC. The Twisted Metal cars already sounded like superhero and villain names to begin with. Hammerhead, Twister, Crimson Fury, the Joneses. Okay, maybe not that one, but give me a break. And I think DC would be better than Marvel for this because it's generally regarded as grittier, and I think the overall roster would be more suited to a Twisted Metal theme. I'm not putting Spider-Man in a driver's ed vehicle and sending him off to get road-killed, and I don't want the Avengers just quipping at everyone the whole time. But that's my pitch for Twisted Metal DC. You get that single-player or co-op story mode, put some versus battle modes in there, give it some online, boom, literally, because it's the sound of a Joker missile blasting the trunk of your car. It will never get made as long as anyone on Earth lives, but I can dream. That's gonna do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe. Watch all my other videos while setting your hair on fire, and I'll see you guys next time.